Hello everybody, it's good to see you. Today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to do some question and answers. So a while back I put out a phone number that you could call in and leave a message for. And I thought that was a lot of fun. And I got some cool responses with some great questions. So I thought we'd go and get some of those questions answered and have a little bit of fun doing this. And remember, if you have questions that you want to call in, the number, the information, all that stuff's below. You could also just email me or whatever, put a comment down there. I might, make a video out of my comment someday, but whatever. However you want to engage with me, that's awesome. So let's get to the first question by Jean.
Hey Jared, this is John. I was wondering, I just started back into photography and I was wondering, I really don't know that much about my camera. What's the best way to learn the ins and outs of taking, I have a Canon Rebel.
Okay, so that's a good question. I think that it's one of those things where it's overwhelming when you get a new camera, especially when you've been out of photography for a little bit. I can't imagine for the people that have been out of photography for a little bit and they come back in 2024. Oh my gosh, there's so much to learn and understand, and I think it's overwhelming. I think the number one thing is just to remember that you don't have to learn everything at once. Right? You don't have to learn everything that this entire camera can do. So as an example, I have a Nikon Z8 here. And I really use only like 20% of what this camera can do. Maybe not even that. Like there's a whole bunch of stuff when I go into here and I'm going into the the custom settings and I'm looking at like metering and exposure. Like there's so much that I don't really totally understand how it works. Fine tune the optimal exposure. I have no idea what that means. Sync release mode options, I'll probably never need that. Exposure delay mode, I'll never probably need that. I have no idea what that means. Most of these I just skip. I just ignore like 90% of it and I just find the stuff that I need to know and I'll work on that. Now, if you're just talking about generally how to use your camera, I would focus on number one, you don't have to know everything. Number two is just kind of looking at one thing a day or focusing on one thing at a time. A lot of times these kind of videos, like tutorial videos, they can be overwhelming because they're like 20, 30, an hour long sometimes, right? And they throw so much information at you that it gets too much. And so it's hard to follow and it's difficult. So I would say just go one thing at a time. So for instance, your camera probably has different modes, aperture priority mode, shutter priority. Just go with one of those modes and see what happens when you change your settings on one of those modes. And just be intentional and spend like a couple hours looking at aperture priority. The next day, look at shutter priority. The next day, look at, program mode and just go down that line. And then I think that you need to know how your autofocus system works. You understand how your exposure modes work and your autofocus system works. That's like 80% of it, right? Then you have drive modes and stuff like that. But I think that you could focus on those things. If you kind of slow down and you remember that you don't need to know everything and you focus on just a couple things at a time or one thing at a time, I think you'll be better off and you'll start to learn that stuff pretty well. So let's move on to the next question.
Hi, Jerred. It's Gothy. I've got two questions for you because they kind of feed into each other. The first question, as I know you've made this transition over the last few years, is what one single, you only allowed one piece of advice, would you give to somebody who wants to transition photography from a hobby to a business? What's the one piece of advice you would give them? And then my second question is, now you've made the transition, what was the one thing that surprised you most? It could be a positive, it could be a negative. I'll leave that open for you to interpret. What was the thing that surprised you most about making that transition to a full-time photographer? That's my two questions. I'm really interested to know what you think. Cheers, Goffy.
Okay, Goffy, you're coming in with some heat, man. These are some tough questions. You're asking advice for somebody who's maybe a hobbyist and they're thinking about going into pro. The reason why I think you're asking this is a situation I found myself in years ago where I quit my job as a high school teacher and became whatever I am today, which is I don't even know what I am today. I'm a professional photographer slash artist, and I do some other stuff too. So I think my number one bit of advice, honestly, would be for someone who wanting to make that transition from being a hobbyist or an amateur to a professional is just your photography is not the determining factor of success. When I say that, I mean like how good your photography is generally not a determining factor of your success. It needs to be really good for the right audience, but it doesn't need to be great. And that's sometimes hard for a lot of people, I think, to understand is that the quality of the photography is not the number one indication of whether you're going to make it as a pro. More importantly, as a pro, you're probably looking at, do you have enough contacts? Do you know enough people in the industry that you're trying to sell to? And then if you don't have that stuff, how do you make those inroads? And I think that's the most important part, is focusing on that stuff instead of focusing all on the photography. People get caught up on making perfect photos. And then in the real world, most people don't care about perfect photos. They want a perfect photo for a perfect problem that they have, right? If they want to put something on a wall, or if they want to put something in a hospital, they just want a solution to a problem. And so somebody who can give them that easily, quickly, that's more important than great photos. To answer the second part of that question, what's the most surprising part of this? Probably the most surprising part is the difficulty in managing my schedule. That sounds lame. It's insane that I'm saying that even, but it's really hard. I was a high school teacher for almost 20 years. And so you have to imagine my brain for 20 years was based on like a bell schedule. You know, I'd wake up to an alarm. I'd get to school. The bell would ring. The bell would ring. The bell would ring all day, all the different classes. The final bell rings. I get to go home. All right. And then when I go home, I can do whatever. I can go take photos. I could have fun. The most surprising thing for me is managing a schedule. And then that just really leads into discipline, personal discipline. Honestly, I could go to work and have a bad day and not be a great teacher for a day, but I'm still getting paid, right? I'm still going to work and I'm not that great of a teacher. I'm having a rough day or whatever. If I do that at home, I don't get paid at all so I can't really have too many bad days, or you fit it into your schedule, you figure it out. But the most surprising thing has definitely been the discipline required to keeping a schedule that leads to success. That's been a challenge. So those are not very sexy answers. Those are pretty boring answers, but they're what I found out. Okay, this last question is probably the most important question that we're going to get today.
How do you take cool pictures while looking good?
And I got to say, that's a really good question. I think that what she's referring to is how I look specifically in this video right here. And if you look at it, it's obvious that I'm in peak physical condition for like a human male at the age of 49. And Casey, it's just a lot of work. It's a lot of working out at the gym, eating right, getting a lot of sun. I put cucumbers, is it? I was about to say pickles. You put pickles under your eyelids to make them look good. I do all that, all right? I got some special skin lotion, and I work really hard to make myself look good while I'm taking these really cool pics. So thank you for that question. And hey, again, if anybody else has more questions, throw them out there. This is a lot of fun. I like this format. We might do this live or something sometime. For everybody who's been in the video this long, that's actually watched up until now, I wanted to do a quick update about Oreo. Oreo, of course, is a cat that I adopted months ago. My family adopted. Here's a video from today. My wife took this, and Oreo is hanging out on the front counter. He is doing fantastic. He loves belly rubs. He loves to hang out. I think he's enjoying his time indoors. So awesome. For everybody, thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.